Hello, skillsters and scrapping entrepreneurs. This is Bob from Gil Skillz here, and today we're going to be separating the number one from the number two in this big old tote and seeing how much weight we have with each category, and then adding it to our total for the goal of 2,000 pounds before July of 2026. But before we get started on that, this is from the last little adventure we took with all of those transformers and whatnot. I didn't weigh up the prepared steel, so I just figured I'd show you how much in prepared steel we got. Just shy of 50 pounds. Woodle. Anywho, let's get back to the good stuff. All right, guys, so here we are. This is the tote. Got a ton of copper in it. Not a literal ton. If it had a ton, that would be pretty freaking sweet. But nonetheless, it's got a decent amount of copper in it. We're going to go ahead and separate the number two from the number one. And this is the device we're going to go ahead and do it with. As you can see, pretty cheap, pretty straightforward. We're just going to chop as we go along to separate the copper that has solder and, is dirty in general or has paint on it, whatever the case may be, that would prevent it from being number one. So if I think I can get away with it being number one copper, I'm going to put it in a separate bin. So this is going to be the bin for the number two that is left over after all is said and done. And I'm going to be weighing it as we go along. Go ahead and start that. Should zero out. And bada boom, bada bing. We're pretty much ready to go. I'll be putting the number one in this little bucket here. And at the end, I'll probably weigh this too. So let's go ahead and get started. So yeah, some of the stuff is quite literally dirty, so I'll go ahead and put these on to protect my hands. I was working on separating copper from some brass earlier today, and I'm accidentally stabbing my pointer finger on my right hand. So my advice to you is to not do that. Anywho, got a nice little apparatus here, so let's go ahead and get started. These here, I'm not going to mess with. I mean, obviously, I could clean these up. I could make this number one, but I'm not going to. So I'm going to put this in number two. There we go. We're on the board. Well, we were. It was like 0.5 or something like that, but now it's not. So yeah, let me put another couple of these in here. There. Now we're on the board. So one of the points of contention with a lot of scrappers is tubing number one or number two if oil goes through it. The real answer, the majority of the answer is going to be it's number two, but ultimately it really depends on your scrapyard. So I'll give you an example. This stuff right here came from an air conditioner. So we've got some spots here that I'm going to cut. And I am going to put this in number one. I mean, I'm not going to try to pull one over on the, the scrapyard, but I am going to separate it just in case. So if they do ask the question, was it from an AC unit or whatnot, I'm going to answer honestly. And if they give me number two for it, that's perfectly fine. But I'd rather separate it and at the very best get number one pricing for these things than, getting all number two. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started. All right, I had to modify this a little bit because it slipped out the first time I tried to use it, so dang. So anyway, there we go. We got that, of course, it fell on the floor. So we got a soldered joint here, so I'm gonna go ahead and cut this again. So to me, I'm gonna put this in the number one bin. And again, I'm going to answer honestly. I'm not going to try to pull something over on the scrapyards or anything like that. Some will accept this as number one, but you want to ask your scrapyard. And unlike me, you may want to ask them in advance. That way, you don't have to waste all this time doing this and finding out later that they won't accept it as number one. And you just throw the whole thing in number two. So anyway, let me go ahead and continue. Number one. So this here, I'm going to treat as number one. Got this little bit for number two. This stuff right here, this little piece right here kind of looks, I don't know, it looks painted a little bit. So I'm going to put all that in number two. Number 2. We'll put some more of these in there for the number 2. Number 2. Number 2. All right, so this piece right here, it doesn't have any solder on it whatsoever. So I'm gonna put this in the number 1 bin. Now these here, I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are on these here. These actually came from tankless water heaters. There is solder on the sheet, so I'm gonna actually consider this number 2. I'm not gonna separate all this stuff out because there's a lot of solder on the copper tubing and the sheet and all that fun stuff. So this is number 2. Number 2. Number 2. All right, so there is no solder pieces here. No solder, so number 1. So this is kind of a new verse, same as the first type of deal. This piece right here, we got, I'm gonna try to get number 1 for this, but if I can't, it's number 2. There's a solder joint right here. So I'm gonna cut here and make that little piece number 2. And then I'll have another strip of number 1 that comes to here. And then I'll cut that again. Anyway, you get the picture, right? So, number 1. All right. So number one. This stuff is painted a little bit here and it's got this fuzzy crap all over it. You know what? I probably could get away with that there. So this here's number 2. Oh, excuse me. All right. Number 1. Number 2. All right, so now that you guys have a general idea of how this is gonna work, I'm gonna go ahead and time lapse pretty much the whole thing, unless I see something of significance that you guys might wanna talk about, or there's something of note that you might be interested in knowing. So anyway, long story short, I'm gonna go ahead and start the time lapse now. Okay. All right, guys, so far, this is what we got. We got 39.25 pounds of number 2, and we ended up having a decent amount of number 1, more so than I thought, or at least that's what I'm going to try to get for it. Remember we had that discussion earlier. Let me just spread this around a little bit. All right. So what I'm going to do, see this here, this is one big, fairly thick copper pipe. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the angle grinder and skim it a little bit to shiny it up so that it'll pass for number 1. I mean, this is pretty heavy, so I think that's worthwhile to do. So I'm going to do that. And then I got a couple of these pieces here that have, see, these number 1 copper, but it's got a brass bit at the very end. I might just snip the brass bit off and then just be done with it and put the rest in number 1. But let me go ahead and get this done real quick. So this is all the number 2 that I got out of that tote. But this is what I'm going to send in as number 2. This here is what I'm going to keep as number 1 and see if the scrapyard will take it as number 1. So $39.95, we're going to go ahead and add that to the total. And yeah, I'm going to go ahead and put this in the pile right now. Maybe. Actually, hold on. I'm going to put you over there and then I'm going to bring it over. That's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. So you stay right here. You're attached to the steering wheel of my John Deere. I'm going to go ahead and move this out of the way. Get that out of the way. Here. Get this out of the way. And I'll bring over that stuff. Give me just a second, guys. Full. Getting full. And dropping stuff. There we go. Let's see. Get you. All right. So that's what it's looking like right now. That's all the number 2. It's pretty much full up. But I am going to compact it, and so I'm hoping it will compact a little bit more. And then, you know, we can fit a little bit more in there. But in the interim, that's that. Now, let's go on over and weigh the number 1. Because I am curious about that. Oh, look. Noodle didn't make it in there. Oh well, the noodle ain't going to be very much, right? All right, so that, it should be, yep, okay, so it's zeroed out. Made a big old mess. That's okay. Messes are permitted. Get all this stuff in there so I can get it away. All right. So it looks like we got 23 pounds, 23.5 pounds of what I perceive to be #1 copper. So that's what I will be bringing in with me and saying, hey, this is #1. If you don't think it's #1, that's fine, but I think it's #1. All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I really do appreciate you being here, watching this video through its entirety. If you enjoyed what you've seen, you know, please feel free to like and comment. And if you're not subscribed, please feel free to do so, because it really does help me, helps my channel, helps the YouTube algorithm recognize my channel and share it out to others like yourself that might be interested in this kind of stuff. So until the next time, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, have a scrap happy day. And for those that celebrate it, happy Thanksgiving.